Hey everybody, it's Dan from Atomic UX here. Today we're going to be looking at some checkbox styles, the browser defaults, some shortcomings of those browser defaults, how we can improve them and jazz them up using animated SVGs. So let's get started. So first of all, we're going to create an empty HTML document. I'm just going to do exclamation mark and then use Emmet to finish that. Using Visual Studio Code, you should have access to the same sort of thing. Leave these all just default. And then in the body, we're going to need to add an input. Type is going to be checkbox. And then we're going to need a couple of attributes in here that are quite important for the functionality that we're going to build in a little bit later. Those are ID, which I'm just going to call this checkbox again, and name, checkbox. And now on the right here, I've got a preview of this creation. So now we have a little checkbox, just zoom in a bit. And now this is just the Chrome default checkbox. Internet Explorer, everything will look a little bit different, and it's pretty boring, and it's very small at the moment. So this is normal size, really small. I mean, that's about 13 pixels across. So really small. You want a tap target to be about 48 pixels tall, so you can get to it on mobile. So what we can do is we can add a label. Now, if you put the for attribute and change that to match the input, then you make this clickable. So now if I click this label, the checkbox will check and uncheck as well, but only if you have that for attribute. Now the problem is that these input boxes aren't actually particularly stylable. They're pretty much set in their ways, and if you can add any particular styles to them, it might not be supported across lots of different browsers, as if you use them like WebKit styles or Opera styles or anything like that. But what we can do is, because this label is clickable and this is an element in of itself, we could make this the whole thing, make this the whole checkbox, make this the whole input, and then hide the default little box. And in the background, hidden, it would be being checked and unchecked when you just tap the label. And then we can add styles to the label to indicate if it's checked and unchecked using a magic little pseudo class called checked. So let's start doing that. So we're going to need to add a style sheet here. So I'll go link. It's automatically done it as a style sheet, and I'll just say main.css. And I've already created a main.css next to my index file here, nothing in it. I'm just going to add in some styles here just to make this a bit prettier, just setting the font to sans serif and putting a container to give us some space around the element. Okay, so first of all, we're going to hide the input, so it's an input, and then we're going to use this type. We're going to use this attribute selector. I'm going to say type equals checkbox, and then we're going to hide it by doing display none. So now input's hidden, but it's being checked and unchecked, but we can't see that happening. So it's a really bad experience now because there's no visual feedback as to whether that's being checked or unchecked. So what we're going to do is make the label look like a checkbox input. So first of all, we need to target that label. So we'll do exactly the same selector as before, just doing it in vanilla CSS. So anyone can do this without having to install any Sass stuff, although I'd heartily recommend using Sass. Now we're going to use another tricky little selector here that's called a sibling selector. You can do that, or you can do an adjacent one like this with a plus, and so we're going to say label. And that's because in here we have an input right next to a label, so that'll catch it. Okay, so we'll make this into a bit of a block to make it look a little bit more interactable. So I'm going to change it to cursor pointer. That's a fairly universal sign of this is interactable, such as anchors and what have you by default. And we'll make it into a bit more of a block by saying padding 10 pixels, padding 10 pixels. I'm going to say We're going to give it a box shadow as well to make it look a bit raised up so that you can push it down. slightly skeuomorphic. So we'll say 2 pixels X offset, 2 pixel Y offset, and a 5 pixel blur or spreads, RGBA, so red, green, blue, alpha, and we'll make this black, but with a 0.2 alpha channel for the transparency to fade it out a bit. Okay, cool. So it looks like a block. It looks a bit sort of interactable now. That's cool. Just missed a container element to give us that spacing around the outside. Again, using emmet here, so just do dot container for class container, and then it does the div form, which is nice. Just tab this, make it all pretty. I don't like the super straight edges, so we'll just do a border radius of 7 pixels. Also, we'll make the whole thing display inline block, just so we don't have any crazy wrapping or anything going on. Cool. So we're just going to do a little something to make this even more obvious that it is interactable. So we're going to say, same as before, type equals checkbox, and we're going to do a pseudo class of hover, and then we're going to look for the label, and then for that label we're going to apply a background of a slightly off-white, so F8, F8, F8. And now we have a hover effect. But again, we're not getting any feedback that this is clicked or unclicked, checked or unchecked. So we're going to add some styles here that show that it is indeed checked, and we're going to apply those styles to a checked state on the input that's hidden, but the styles will be affecting the label, if that makes sense. So we'll just copy this to say we have to keep on writing it. So we'll say that, and then we'll use another pseudo class like hover, but this time it's checked. Label. And now I'm going to squish that box shadow a little bit. So I'm going to say same as before, let's say like a 1 pixel X, 1 pixel Y, and then like a 2 pixel blur, and the same color. So now when you click it, with that shadow being collapsed, it looks like it's being pushed down, which is cool. Still doesn't look like a checkbox though. That's not recognizable as a checkbox because we don't have the obvious recognizable checkbox with the tick in it that everyone expects to see for a checkbox, preferably with a square, because round starts, or a circle starts to look like a radio button. So what we'll do here is, obviously we need to recreate one of those, and there's a couple ways we can do that. We could put some padding here, move everything over to one side, and have like a background image with a no repeat on it. That way you can do it pure CSS and have an image for checked and an image for unchecked. But how we're going to do it is much cooler with SVGs, because then you can manipulate them and put some animations on them. So in Adobe XD, I've already created this. So it's just a simple box with a check in it that I've just done using a pen tool. Click, and then you hold shift to do 45-degree angle, and just do it like that. And then because Adobe XD is vector based, you can just copy and paste it like this. You can just copy and paste it. So we're going to come into the label and add it like that. And then also what I'm going to do to help with alignment a little bit later on is add a span tag that's going to go around the text inside the label. Just move that around and make it pretty. Okay, so there it is, bish bash bosh. But it doesn't tick and untick, it doesn't do anything at the moment, it just sits there, whether the input is checked or unchecked. So in order to be able to manipulate that, we are going to have to add some styles. So add some classes. So first of all, I'm going to come in, and so this group is the rectangle. So I'm going to add a class in here of box for the box part of the checkbox, and then in here, this is the check. So I'm going to add a class of check. All right, then jump back into our CSS. Now, what we could do here is we'll set up a couple of styles. One for, so just copy that. one for unchecked. And so we're saying the input of type checkbox to the adjacent label, and then within that, the SVG, which is here inside the label, and then inside of that, we're looking for the class check. So class check. Now by default, we're going to say display none, and then we'll duplicate this rule. Just Control D there on PHP Storm, and next to here we'll do that magical pseudo clause checked, and now we're going to say display block. So now check uncheck. It's a little bit big, so I'm just going to take that down a little bit. Just make it 20, 20. Cool. That'll do for now. Archie, in your bed. Go on, in your bed. So that's all well and good, but it's pretty boring. It's just checked or unchecked. It would be nice if it had a nice sort of animated flourish, a nice adding a tick to it. So let's do that. And we're going to do that using a bit of a kind of hack. So what we can do is we can add a stroke dash array to it. So if we come in here, we'll take out display none, and we're going to say stroke dash array. We're going to set this to 30, and then stroke dash offset, and also set that to 30, and that has the effect of essentially hiding it. So if you imagine a straight dashed line, what we're doing is we're spreading the gap of that dash, and if you spread it far enough on a set segment of line, eventually that line is visually hidden. So it kind of exists there, but it's dashed out. So that has the effect of hiding it. And then what we would do is we just come into the checked state and we remove display blocks. We don't need that anymore. And we change this to stroke dash offset. We change that to 0. And that will have the effect of essentially display block and display none. But because it's instantaneously changing that offset, it just looks like it's appearing and disappearing. So we need to add a transition. So we'll come into the default state, and we'll add it on the default state so that it does it forwards, and then when you uncheck backwards. And we'll add transition, and the property we want to transish is stroke dash offset. We're going to have a duration of 0.3 seconds, and we will ease it, just a standard ease. Now check uncheck, and it sort of draws and undraws the line, which is nice. So we can make that a little bit more obvious. So what we'll do is we also added a box class to the box part of the checkbox. So I think we should add some styles to that as well. So we'll copy this line, and then instead of the check item within the SVG, we're going to target the box item within the SVG. And when it's checked, we are going to say fill is blue, so we'll go with no red channel. It's a nice positive blue, and then we'll make the stroke that as well. So if we just duplicate that line and change this to stroke, and then you won't see that black line either, which is pretty cool. But now the line is a little bit lost in there, so we'll also come up here and we'll say stroke is white. Cool, kind of Facebooky looking, but a positive color, very much. This is positive, this is negative, checked, unchecked. Awesome. So just zoom that out a bit. A little bit of misalignment there, nothing we can't fix quickly. So we will come up here, just going to steal this line to modify a little bit. So we're going to say input of type checkbox, label, SVG. We just want to target the entire SVG, and then I'm going to say vertical align middle, which is a rule you can use on images and SVGs, and there we go. A little bit there. Actually, you might say bottom might be better. There we go, that's cool. Cool, so we're looking really good. There's only one last thing. So as you can see here, when I refresh the page, there is like a little transition to its default state. So it's a little kind of weird bug within Chrome. I'm not sure what other browsers have this behavior, but when I refresh, it kind of undraws the check as it goes through the transition we set up. So one way you can get around that is if you just add a script tag to the bottom and just have an empty space in it, that sorts it. So if we recap, if we take a look at this now, we've got an element that's much nicer to look at, much bigger target to click, got a nice transition on there, and you can play with these styles and make it match the rest of your site, the rest of your form, make it look really sweet, make it fit in, run with it, do whatever you want with it, and it'll serve you well. And what's nice is because it's just using that CSS pseudo checked class, if you like refresh the page and it's remembering some kind of state and it's already pre-checked, you don't have to set up a JavaScript event to go looking for it and check if it's been checked and apply the styles to it and all that funny stuff. So yeah, cool. Alright guys, I hope that was super helpful and that you can use it inside your projects. There'll be plenty more of these kind of tutorials coming. I'll be doing some coding tutorials like this, some design tutorials. I'll be going through some UX fundamentals, some things you can do in stakeholder workshops, some cloud-based user testing advice, bits and pieces like that you can use to improve conversion rate on your site. So like this video if you learned something, subscribe for more, and I'll see you again soon.